I'm still trying to remember to look at this camera because that's where I'm going to see you. Today, I'm excited because we're going to be able to do something that I normally haven't got to do, but it is the basis of this channel. We got God, family, country. God always, being first and foremost, your family being important to be under that, how you develop that, how you build that out, and of course, country as well, where you live. And that starts in your household, goes to your community, your state, and us as a nation. Ultimately, how we treat everybody at the end of the day. I want to talk about this because it's important. You can kind of see the decaying of moral and the rebellion in society starting to affect us as we have these internal conflicts that allow external conflicts to come in and flourish. And one of the things that I have really, I guess, shied away from because I didn't know how to present it in a way that was authentic and heartfelt was what's going on at the border. And I'm going to show you a clip from Shawn Ryan. And the reason why I like Shawn Ryan is just really like his format. And when I do have time to listen to podcasts, he's definitely a podcast that I listen to. Also recently become a Christian. And so that was exciting to hear. But I was listening to him beforehand. That's not one of the qualifications for me to decide if I'm going to listen to you or not. We're going to listen to a conversation with a Green Beret and a Navy SEAL talking about, from a military standpoint, what's going on in the border and if we should be concerned. And I think this is an important look because at the end of the day, no matter how you feel about the border, I think that you should understand what a border is, why it's there, and why it's in place. And that's an important thing to think of. So let's go into this. Let's see what they got to say. And we're going to be reacting to this video. And then we're going to be going a little bit further and talking about it and maybe looking at some more videos.
The border. I might take you down there. I would love to go down there.
Let's go. It is insanity.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. It's hard to believe. It's very hard to believe.
When you see numbers, when you see like 300,000 people a month, the Super Bowl had 60,000 people in it. Right? This last couple of days ago.
Yeah.
60,000 people. Then you multiply that to 300,000 come across in a month.
300,000. That's a lot. That's more than some cities. For some places that are up and coming and growing and flourishing, they'll boast a town of 300,000. You have 300,000 people from all walks of life. You got good people. You got bad people. I don't think we're over generalizing to say that this is a problem, and it absolutely cannot happen. Let's listen on.
5 times the Super Bowl. Crossing our border, military-age men from every single one of our enemies, state actors, moving their people across our open border. Chinese, Russian, terrorists.
See, this is
multi-time.
There you go right there. They're not talking about just Mexican immigrants coming across. This is and here's my talking point. My first talking point that I was thinking about the other day. Facts right here too. This is no opinion. So we got a third world border. Actually, our border sucks sometimes worse than a third world border for a first world country. And what I want to say is we're one of the most hated countries in the entire world. We are hated because we have the most freedom and the most rights anywhere. It's here. You go to another country, you could get stoned in the streets, honor killings, right there. The trial, who knows if you're getting their fair trial over there. Freedom of speech, you can say whatever you want here. You can go up north into Canada, that's not happening. People don't even know that doesn't have as much freedom as us. And you can see they're trying to take it away. And for some reason, we have people who have been brainwashed into the theology of that we would be better off with less freedom, when the whole basis of us coming over here was to have more freedom. So that's what's crazy with this whole thing, is that how do we have a worse than third world border where everybody can come in? And they're going to speak a little bit on what some of those possibilities would look like from a experienced, tenured military background perception. So let's listen on there.
And felons.
This is where I get into, this is what really, I mean, everything else that's gone on, all of it, the Afghan withdrawal, Ukraine, Russia, is like Epstein, like all of it, dude, all of it. When I just asked you, do you think we're in a failed state? I don't know how you can answer that question and say no. Because
True. There's no way to, with all logic, just logically, there's no way to not agree with this.
Because we have become so fucking incompetent in this country. I don't understand how we could not be defeated. It would have to be a nation that is more incompetent than we are, and that's hard to find right now.
Well, some powerful words. Obviously, I probably had to edit that out because we're not cussing on our channel. But I understand his frustration, and that's pretty much why he's going to those words. You look back at past terrorist plots, 9/11, and them coming into the country, and we pretty much have an open border for them to wreak havoc and do pretty much whatever they want. And I'm not going to sit here and give ideas. There's a ton of things across my mind. So if I'm not someone who thinks about how to undermine the country that I live in and love, if it's not rocket science for me to just think of some preliminary things in my mind, what do you think the people who their whole life is consumed by the thought of us in America, what do you think they're thinking of? So obviously we need to be, this is chess, not checkers. We need to be chess moves ahead. You can't get into North Korea. These people can't even get out. You just go ahead and try this around Canada and see how this works. It's not going to happen. But for some reason, it's all good with us. And when you say, hey, we need to tighten up, you're called names or put in different type of categories. That to me is the bewilderment and the incompetence that we're speaking of. And really, let's listen on. I understand why he's frustrated, and I can feel his frustration because it's just logic, common sense.
Now, that is really hard to find. We don't have a border. We are the only free country left in the world, supposedly free, right?
Yeah.
And we have a wide open border that roughly, last thing I read, 6 million plus people have crossed. We are broke. We are printing our money. We have weaponized our dollar.
We have destroyed the First Amendment by tech corporations.
It's fake money.
Interesting about the First Amendment, which, I just spoke about our liberties and our rights. Absolutely can see that we've been ushered into a consequences. You can have free speech, but you will not be able to have certain positions. You will not be able to get certain loans for your company. Maybe you could go out and get a home loan for sure. But there's banks that won't deal with you. Chase, being a major bank who has closed accounts just based upon whatever they feel. Just like an opposing view or a strong view of something that's not harmful or detrimental to somebody, but it doesn't go with the mainstream. People have had their accounts closed. Don't believe me? Go look it up. You're not going to be searching for a needle in a haystack besides the algorithm hiding it. But as far as it existing, it very much so exists. And we'll touch base on this in a podcast as well. Obviously, sometimes I realize there's going to be some double talk with my, the media that I bring you. And that's because, there's different platforms. I want to be able to react to this, but I can't react to this on my podcast. Otherwise, I would turn this into a podcast. So a lot of times I have to have a conversation twice. But I mean, compared to the news, you're getting the same conversation every day beat in your head with whatever they want to narrate. Let's get back into this and listen to what they have to say.
I mean, in how could we possibly not already be defeated?
And what I wanted to touch on is the corporations have suppressed your freedom of speech, and why that should bother you as a Christian is that if you believe that the word is the word of God and that we need to adhere to it, and then you're baited publicly online or at work, and maybe you're not like pushing anything on anybody in an inappropriate manner, but somebody baits you or questions you, and you give like, hey, yeah, I do believe that God wrote that, and I'm trying my best to follow that. And anything that's not following that, I'm not for. That's a counselable offense. It used to be cool that the president prayed or this or that, but when you see both sides running right now, you got Biden, who's alleged, he's a Catholic, and you got Trump, who says that he's a Christian. And we're not here to judge those men on what they do or don't do. I haven't done enough research to even draw a conclusion on what's going on, but just looking at their talking points on what's going to run the country, whose rights are going to be protected and things like that, you can definitely see that Biden leans against the word of God, and Trump, as far as like protecting the word of God, I think he brings it up while other people don't bring it up. And that's important. Of course, we don't want to get baited as well. Someone can look at the Democrats and what they've done for the African American population. They haven't really done much at all, but they bait them every year. So yeah, could we be being baited as well? Sure. You just got to look at the policies they say they're going to put in play and then their actions, right? And if it's not lining up, or they got a history of not lining up, you can make an easy decision there. So let's move on.
That's a real question.
Yeah.
What would you do if you were Russia? What would you do if you were China? What would you do if you were one of these many terrorist organizations who, by the way, are all joining forces against a common enemy? You know who that common enemy is? For those listening, we're the common enemy. Good job.
Yeah.
Good fucking job letting this shit happen.
I wouldn't have to do anything. I would continue to stoke and stalk the flames and fires of dissent, of racism, of every form and fashion of divisive issue that Americans have right now.
Very, very smart. They're now going into the mind, and these guys are used to fighting and dealing with the tactics, psychological, physical, guns, bullets, and then psychological warfare, the mental warfare, the propaganda of warfare. And these guys have seen it on all sides, and people are joining forces against us, the now new common enemy, and our border is weak. Look, like, just imagine you're playing a video game or a board game, whatever, and your enemy is you got a guy who looks like the United States, and you're playing with your buddy and like, hey, if we actually team up, we can use our power bars and They're like, but yeah, they're so big. How are we going to take it over? They're like, oh, well, look, they have a weak. Let's look at their strengths and weaknesses. They have a super weak border. So much so that the people are arguing not to even strengthen the border. They have their own citizens that are just mind blowingly off their rocker. And they're even punishing people who speak out against strengthening the border, and you're not allowed to say anything or it's highly cancelable. So it's very smart that they're speaking about this.
To, to confuse and divide us further, I would throw all of my money into TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat to make these kids sit there on those phones for as long as I could, which they are. I would show them.
Right there is important because the battle is not won on someone your age or my age. If you're watching this, I'm not, I'm sure I'm not watched by a ton of kids. The battle's for the mind of your kids. You can see that. I did a YouTube short on TikTok's algorithms with the China's algorithm and our algorithm, and it's like to make us retards and kind of push that agenda. Like, there's one thing to be like, we're giving what the people want, but if you get to dictate, train, and nurture what the people want, then what the people want are never really what the people want in the end. They're just wanting what they were trained to want. And you can see that the US is forcing TikTok to sell. So even people on the left know how bad this is, and they're willing to come together with people on the right and make just this unanimous collaborative decision to say, hey, you guys got to sell. We know what you're doing with the data.
That the nuclear family is not necessary, that freedom isn't really a thing that's given by God, but
Nuclear family. You know how many studies are done on violence, mental health, and the breakdown of the nuclear family? Certain movements that were, for one thing, for, fighting for equality at one point, or saying that they were fighting for equality, that at their core, they were communists, and at their core, they hated the idea of the nuclear family. And you can kind of see our society decaying from, no longer having this nuclear family. And nobody's saying that the nuclear family was always perfect. I mean, look, no matter where you go, you're going to get your bad apples. But when you have your bad apples training the next generation, that just creates an influx. It multiplies the bad apples.
Something that's given to us by the family or by the government, which is another thing that they're paying for us to see on our phones often. I would finance and support political opponents that would want to fight American values and put in other forms of governance that are wholly against the American ideals and the founding fathers would have imagined.
That's a big thing. Our founding fathers had no idea. And do we really ever truly, can we mitigate, risk on that level? As somebody who's in business, and I'm always going to go here, I was a project manager and I had to coordinate a lot, and I am, even my brain that always thinks about liability, like a lot of my friends will ask me questions about things to kind of get like a full spectrum. And I'm not talking about being pessimistic, but a lot of times I can look at like a lot of different liabilities and things that can come up. I'm just really good at kind of looking at the picture and kind of trying to put the pieces together and seeing what the potential problems could be. So we have 3 different pathways to get to the goal. One of those things that I learned is, in project management and in managing a company, is to always have more than one way to the goal, if possible and applicable, because there's always going to be something that comes up, these incidentals. And even in economics, what we learned was, and you'll hear me refer to this a lot because I like it and it's super relevant, is that when you set something up, according to economics, you have that X where You have, supply and demand, or you have a solution, a problem and a solution, and you're going to meet that sweet spot, and it's going to solve that problem. At the same time, what you have is unattended side effects, and you're going to not know about some of these side effects, or not know the ramifications of these side effects in the long run, seeing, because they were just not foreseeable. A lot of times people will call it collateral damage. It's a side effect. It's an unattended outcome that comes from you putting this good, sometimes even just good, into place, or putting this together, just not being able to foresee some things that are going to happen. And I think that's a conversation we're having, right? These guys are having right now, is that all the people who don't want a stronger border, who want a third world piece of crap, hoopty border, don't realize the number one, like, I got what you're saying, like the obvious side effects, and then the unattended side effects that they're not thinking of. Me and you might be thinking of them right now. It seems like these guys are thinking about it, but those unattended side effects are so detrimental. I don't even think we realize them. And I'm wondering right now, if we stopped it all today, how long would it take us to recuperate and put ourselves in a secure position where we felt comfortable, just based upon what's already been allowed to happen with the border? Because even if everyone agreed today, we still have to deal with the damage that's been done.
I would try to support the expansion of the federal government. These are all the things that I would do if I was the adversary. And that's what they're doing. They don't have to do anything. They just sit back and hang out and watch us just eat ourselves. That's
what I'm getting at. I don't know how we pull out of this. I don't know. I mean, we talked about at the beginning, before the cameras got turned on. People thought something was going to happen at the Super Bowl. People think, how come nothing's happened yet? You hear one side of the aisle mocking people that are concerned that our border's wide open, and mocking them because nothing's happened yet. We've had 3 years where there has not been any terrorist attack. Well,
Remember, these guys, highly trained military personnel. They're going on orders. They're going on missions that, like, we'll never hear about, that need to take place, need to happen. And these are the individuals that are being sent, and they're speaking about securing a border. Who do you think knows better than securing a border? Shout out to our border patrol, that they're working with what they got, but definitely having a military mind, having this experience. You can't train this. This is like that real life experience that is so much more than the training. And it's a very important perspective. And that's why I'm sharing this, because I want to share this perspective with you. And it's a very logical, it's not emotional, as far as, like, it's not emotionally based decision. It's just a logical, smart decision for somebody who loves the country and loves the country that they're in.
Tell you about war games and simulations. They put these things through a simulation. It shows the probability and the percentage that they're going to have to come out on top. Maybe today they have a 65%. This is hypothetical. Maybe today in the simulation they feed it all the information, and the simulation says, hey, you got a 65% chance you're going to come out on top against the U.S.
Yeah.
But
I never thought about that. Now they're using the technology, especially with AI and these simulated war games, to see what's the likelihood, if we act today versus tomorrow, that we'll be able to. These guys are going into detail. And it may be new to us and shocking to us, but for somebody who probably is plotting on just hating America day in and day out, I can see this being something that they're already doing. If they have billions and millions of dollars and they're collectively coming together, No brainer.
Right now, we are a failed state. We are completely incompetent. And so why would they take that time to attack us right now? Why wouldn't they up the percentage? Okay, well, let's put a little bit more people in this way, put them up in this region. Let's infiltrate the power grid over here. It's weak.
Yeah.
There's no there. You
Continue
can't
to-
even arrest an immigrant right now, even in this state.
a
in
multi-time
Tennessee,
felon.
Yeah, exactly. And so
And they're speaking a lot about the New York attack. One thing about the New York attack is that it would have been somebody that was a citizen. They probably would have been shot and killed for that. And let out of jail the next day. I don't even see how that happened. Even the people that hate to see anything that is bad towards immigration, they couldn't deny that. You know, it was all over the news. A lot of people will say, well, they don't commit as much crime as more than an ordinary citizen, but if they weren't here, they would create 0% crime. So that's really dumb just to have that type of thinking. Like someone who thinks like that, it's kind of scary. And then it's kind of scary if they could even convince you based upon that, like, well, they don't commit more crime than someone that's already here, but if they're not here, they don't commit any crime.
So it's all they're doing right now is strategy.
Yep.
They're just infiltrating, doing whatever they need to do to get that percentage up. And then when somebody strong comes in and the shit starts to get cleaned up, that's when it's going to happen.
Yeah, so how do you fight that? I argue, you know, for the Titanic, which was headed towards that iceberg, had they known and they just made a slight adjustment, just a couple of degrees, they would have avoided that whole entire iceberg, right? No, none of those people. Is that what we need to do? Just the slightest of adjustments? Does that pendulum need to swing back once again towards sovereignty and freedom? You know, the founding.
That's what we're looking at. Can we save this position that we're in now? Like now we're in it. We're in it. It's not going away. I think it was so bad that the left is starting to deal with it as far as like the Democrat Party is, and I think it's an election year. And I think that there's certain parts of the Democratic Party that they have a stronghold in, and they want to assure them, and they're very careful with their words. I noticed that when you watch on the news a lot, is that they're very careful with their words and how they say it, and you don't really know if they're ramping up border protection or just spending more money on trying to look at each person's case. And we're going to reach, like I said, there's only so much we can spend per year.
Of Apogee, our school, was in that same vein. The founding of Save Our Allies, the founding of Sheepdog Response, like all of these things, all it takes is this entrepreneurial American spirit for we as a collective to be like, man, we acknowledge that this is not right and this is dangerous. And for us to combat, for us to have a strong America again, is for the individual to be a strong, competent, capable individual, right?
Important right there. Country. We got to come together on it and say this is dangerous. Notice that he's not knocking anybody's race or religion. He's saying that, hey, this is a dangerous system that we have set up. This is a weak system. This makes us highly vulnerable. So everything that everyone's trying to get, you know, some of the people that are coming over here, they're trying to take advantage of the blessings that are bestowed on the United States, that those are in jeopardy by just allowing that influx to happen. And you gotta make that choice. And I think that a lot of times, if we would speak like this politically, that it would go further, or it would be harder to attack. But then again, I think not. You know, it always seems like, When you try to corner a snake, you'll notice, like, this is what it is. It's like you're trying to corner a snake with, because they're trying to attack you on your speech or the way you said this or that, but it's an idea. And it's like, hey, this is dangerous. We shouldn't do this. But they just attack the way you say that. When you think that you've said it in a way that they're going to have to now deal with it and they're in a corner, they just find a new way to be a snake. A snake is snaking all day long, and that's what they're going to do, is be a snake. And I think in this instance that even if we had a good, clear conversation that, hey, this is dangerous, this shouldn't be happening, I think there would still be resistance from political parties for this to not be a major concern, or that it wouldn't be taken the way that it needs to be taken, which is serious.
Right? Not to be fat, not to be this gelatinous mass that can barely read, that just sits there and swipes on their phone and looks at porn all day long, doesn't know how to use a rifle, doesn't know how to purify water, doesn't know how to be an intentional, disciplined parent to their children. Or
wow, who are they talking about there? Yeah. I think they're talking about the next generation. Do you see that generation being raised different? And guess what that generation is raising? The next generation. Pay attention, guys.
Or a loyal entrepreneur that's going to be dedicated to his employees and his colleagues and his partners in the companies. Like, this is, when you look at the founding fathers, when you read that beautiful Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, like these were written by Americans that stood on the core values of what it meant to be an American. They were not educated at some Ivy League university, but they wrote a document that will stand the test of time. And God,
that's good to know. All of this knowledge at the end of the day, and believe me, as somebody who's obtained a ton of knowledge, and he's talking about, like, these guys didn't go to college. They just had common sense. They knew what they wanted. They were smart through life experience. And this is what they did. They were trying to put something together through trial and error and set up and establish the United States of America. So I definitely agree with what he's talking about.
God, I need Americans to recognize how vulnerable we are. Everything that you just said right now can be fixed. We adjust just a couple of degrees and people take back their sovereignty. They start growing their own food. They start having their own chickens. They start getting strong in body and in mind. They are an ungovernable force. The Americans, the essence of being an American is ungovernable. We are rebellious traitors from our origin. Let's remember what that looked like. Mm-hmm. They told us to do something. We said no, and we put their tea in the harbor. Then they went to Boston, and that shot that was heard around the world kicked off us killing every single one of them and kicking them off of this continent. That is what Americans can do.
Hey, everybody.
Wow. Big point. Yeah, we did come from rebellion. We were running away from suppression and persecution. So we're going to watch another clip here, and we're going to check this out. This is how illegal migrants are invading the United States through the Darien Gap. And we're going to kind of look and see who these people are, what they look like, things like that.
See, when you say military age male, that makes me think that you believe they're coming here to invade in a fight.
I think it's pretty obvious. And I think if you come down with your background, I'm not going to need to say a word. I'm just going to need to take the horse to water and be quiet and let you watch. But your feet are good. Your feet, well, not too bad. Kind of. ¿De dónde son?
Venezuela.
Venezuela. Okay. They are taking over countries. Remember when the crazy people used to say that? Well, it turns out the crazy people were right. I used to think they were crazy. Now I just think they were smarter than I am. I mean, because they saw it.
I just wanted to look at the Darien Gap a little bit and kind of see, you know, what this
Down
looks
with
like,
your background.
what we're dealing with. And obviously these people are living in horrible conditions and they're being taken advantage of. I mean, our immigration policy, our border control is supporting a multi-billion-dollar economy that could be crushed overnight. And these people are bringing in fentanyl that has killed more people every year. That enough alone would make me close the border. If I was president of the United States, I couldn't condone it. There's just no way that I can condone it. I would say absolutely not. My border would look a lot different. But I understand that they don't want that for some reason, because there's no way that, you know, at the end of the day, what I think is there's no way that we can be that dumb on purpose. There always has to be an intention, and I'm assuming that somebody else has these chess moves that I don't agree with that are in place, because I just can't believe that, you know, one of the biggest, baddest, most freest countries in the world is just being ran so off the cuff. And it's a hard sell maybe, but I just have to think that there's some sort of agenda. So, you know, even if we're letting people in, you know, because let's talk about the humanity of it all. If I was over in another country that was ran by, if I was in another country that was ran by like a cartel, and they were telling people in the neighborhood silver or lead. So a lot of times they'll say, hey, like, you can get money with us or you can die. I definitely would bounce, especially if I held my beliefs in the country where I lived. I wouldn't want to be killing other people so people could move a product that destroys people's lives and now kills people as well, which it used to as well, but now it's just killing 13-year-olds. And if I was the president of the United States and I had to look at that, I would say, well, I mean, this is an attack on us. Once again, as I spoke earlier, one of those unattended side effects. And maybe they just don't care at this point, because, I mean, to fentanyl coming in and the amount of fentanyl we've seized, a lot of times the fentanyl that's seized is enough to kill, you know, a whole state or a whole this or a whole that. And what we're not looking at there is, what about the stuff we don't catch? What about the stuff that falls into water, falls on the ground, this and that? There's that pollutant factor that nobody's really taking into account. So I would warn people, because my change would be, you wouldn't be getting through. And that would be that. I would have my border patrol, but then I would have my military there. And I would consider anything that was crossing, unfortunately, an invasion at that point. And I would give people time to adapt to that, but it wouldn't be nice. I would consider, if you're coming, that you have the intent to harm the country, if you weren't going to one of the entry points to seek refuge. One thing that I just kind of want to wrap up on is that I do understand the horrible conditions that some of these people are living in. And I think about my family, and if I was inserted, where would I go? And I would definitely try to come here. Or, I mean, if there's so much drama with coming over here, maybe I could go somewhere else, I don't know, that has a better future for me than being in the cartel or being where I can't eat unless I've got to commit a crime to eat. I don't want to be in that scenario. And so the reason why I'm saying that is that by us just letting everyone just come over here is not fixing the problem as well. You know, we have trading agreements with some of these countries that are knowingly allowing things like this to happen. Number one, our trade with our friends at the border is huge. I could tell, you know, them like, hey, I'm gonna cut. This is getting cut off. This is what's based on what's happening now. I'm cutting this off. We're done. they would probably say, okay, my bad. We'll cut off that gap where they come in. We won't let people come in. They're not going to lose that money. A lot of the other money comes from drugs. They're going to need to get money somehow. That's just my thoughts about what I would do if I have trade agreements in place, I have relationships in place. Those would quickly come to a halt, and we would figure out how to do that somewhere else. And I'm going to tell you like this. All these major corporations will only deal with that for so long before they just say, hey, look, you guys aren't getting it together. We're going to start moving. And when a corporation moves, they're not just like, moving back like they broke up. A couple broke up. Like, how the couple breaks up, they come back together, break up, come back together. They're leaving because it's about bottom line and they're not making money. So they're going to leave. There's unintended consequences for that as well, because that would cause prices to rise for consumers across the world. It gets messy, and it's a lot of moving parts, but I think that we would survive. We could deal with other countries further down south that might want to comply, and we would be good. Maybe not rather quickly, but in a timely manner. Things always seem to correct themselves when you're trying to invoke change. So I definitely understand some of these, people coming through, and I definitely understand that we've caught terrorists, and that's a real thing that's happening. And it's a horrible situation. And like I said in the beginning, regardless how you feel about it, there's no reason why a first world country should have a third world border. There's no reason why a first world country, probably one of the most hated countries in the world, should have a border the way we do. If you were playing a video game, if you were playing a board game of strategy back in the day, and you were looking for weaknesses, because that's how you defeat an opponent, is look for their weak points. You're looking at maybe like a UFC fight. You're going to see the fighter watch his opponent and look for those weaknesses. Our weaknesses are being looked at. This is a weakness, and for some reason, what I'm trying to figure out is why it's an intentional weakness on the Democratic Party, and why they want that.